Grant stepped off the shuttle onto the polished floor of the Frontier Station. He had never seen a place so quiet and bright. The walls were smooth and pale, and soft lights hovered overhead without any visible source. He pulled his coat tighter against the chill in the air and carried a single data pad that held Earth's peace offer. He felt a flutter of nerves in his chest. This was the moment he had trained for. This was his chance to show that humans could stand beside the best. In the galaxy dot, as he walked toward the central hall, Grant saw alien figures move like shadows along the walls. They looked at him with curious eyes. Some had long limbs and pale skin. Others had smooth scales that gleamed in the light. Grant kept his head high. He had learned to greet new worlds with respect and calm. He knew that any sign of fear could become a reason for distrust. In his mind, he repeated the words he would speak to the council. He would talk about Earth's desire for peace, for friendship, for shared progress. The central hall opened into a wide chamber ringed with tall columns. At the far end, a single figure stood waiting. She was the alien ambassador Elise. Her skin was a soft shade of violet, and her hair flowed like a silent wave behind her. She wore a robe that shimmered with faint patterns of light. Her eyes met Grant's with steady calm. She held out her hand in greeting, but Grant did not reach for it. Instead, she stepped closer and brushed her lips lightly against his own. The touch was gentle but full of purpose. Grant froze, surprised, but he felt no fear. Instead, a warm glow spread through him that he had never known before. Around them, the counselors gasped. No one had ever greeted a human with a kiss. Some aliens murmured in shock. Grant saw wide eyes and raised claws pressed to mouths. He felt all eyes on him, waiting for his reaction. For a moment, he felt small, as if he could disappear into the pale floor. Then he stood tall and returned Elise's gaze. He did not pull away. He held her close for a heartbeat before he gently stepped back. His mind raced. He had come with a document, with words of peace. But her kiss told him something more. There was warmth and trust already offered. Grant cleared his throat and lifted his data pad. He spoke in clear, steady tones. Ambassador Elise, thank you for this greeting. On behalf of humanity, I bring our hand in friendship. His voice echoed in the quiet hall. Elise nodded and stepped to his side. Together, they moved toward a transparent table that held the peace offer. Grant placed the pad on it. He watched as Elise's slender fingers tapped the screen. Data flowed upward, shining in thin lines of blue light. Grant explained how Earth's people had overcome old wars, how they learned to share resources, how they dreamed of joining the council with respect and care. As the meeting continued, Grant found himself watching Elise more than the counselors. She listened to every word with gentle focus. When he finished, she opened her mouth to speak. Her voice was soft but clear. Human envoy Grant, she said, your words carry truth. Your heart shows in your eyes. I believe in the promise you bring. Grant felt courage bloom inside him. In that moment, he understood that this journey was more than a mission. It was the start of something new, something that could change his life and the fate of his world. After the counselors agreed to study Earth's offer, Elise guided Grant through the station's galleries. They walked side by side under glowing arches. Grant felt a light breeze that smelled of unknown flowers. He tried to describe Earth's forests, its oceans, its busy cities. Elise listened and smiled. Then she told him stories of her own world, of tall crystal trees and rivers that sang. Grant felt a gentle excitement. He realized that this mission was turning into a personal journey. He did not know what lay ahead. But with Elise by his side, Grant followed Elise down a narrow corridor that glowed with soft blue light. The walls pulsed gently, as if breathing. Elise paused before a tall door made of a glassy material. She placed her hand on a smooth panel, and the door slid open without sound. Grant stepped inside and saw a vast garden under a high dome. Strange plants with silver leaves reached toward the light. Water ran in shallow streams between stone paths. The air was warm and smelled of fresh rain. Elise motioned for Grant to walk with her. They strolled among the plants as Elise spoke of her people's connection to nature. She explained how the gardens were more than decoration. Each plant helped cleanse the air. Each stream carried gentle energy to the city. Grant listened and felt his own breath slow. He had never known a place so calm and alive. He knelt by a pool of clear water and dipped his fingers in. Ripples spread in widening circles, like messages sent outward. Ellie's watched with a soft smile. On Earth, Grant said, we have parks and forests, but they are small compared to your world. He looked up at Ellie's. Here, everything feels alive. Ellie's nodded. We learned long ago that life connects all things. When we heal nature, nature heals us. She plucked a single silver leaf and pressed it into Grant's hand. It was cool and smooth. Take this, she said. It will remind you of our bond. Grant closed his fist round the leaf. He felt a faint pulse, like a shallow heartbeat. He held it carefully and nodded. They left the garden and entered a larger hall filled with silent figures. Ellie's led Grant to a round platform at the center. She tapped a small control, and a hologram rose from the floor. The image showed a group of alien children playing by a river. Their laughter filled the hall, though no sound came from the holo. Ellie's explained that her people valued joy as much as discipline. They taught young ones to use gentle power to shape the world. Grant thought of his own childhood, of games and laughter under open skies. Would you like to try? Ellie's asked. Stepping aside, Grant hesitated. He had come to learn about war plans, psionic shields, and council strategy. He never expected to learn an alien game. Ellie smiled and extended her hand. Hesitantly, Grant reached out. As their fingers touched, the image shifted. It changed to show the gardens, the streams, even Grant himself walking beside Ellie's. The scene moved with them, reflecting their steps. Grant's heart skipped. He looked at Ellie's, whose violet eyes shone with gentle pride. This is our bond engine, Ellie's said. It links to minds in simple play. It shows us how we move together. Grant watched as the hologram showed his own gestures, mirrored perfectly. When he lifted his arm, even for a moment, the image raised his arm. He waved, and the holo waved. Ellie's laughed softly. Grant felt a fullness in his chest. He realized this was more than a game. It was a way to share trust. After a few moments, Ellie's ended the demonstration. The hologram faded. The hall dimmed, and soft lights returned above. Grant felt a strange calm. He had faced war plans and council debates, but this small moment touched him more than any treaty. Ellie's watched him quietly. He met her gaze and saw both warmth and hope. They stepped out into a balcony that overlooked a city of pale towers. Lights shimmered on the buildings as evening approached. Distant lights blinked like stars brought to ground. Below, people moved in organized patterns that seemed like a flowing river. Grant felt a pulse of awe. He had never seen unity so complete. Elys stood close to Grant. She placed her hand on his shoulder. This is my home, she said softly. And soon, it could be our home together. Grant turned to her. He wanted to say that he felt the same, that his mind and heart had already opened. But the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he looked out at the city and nodded. It is beautiful, he said, and I want to help protect it. Ellie smiled and leaned in. She kissed him lightly on the cheek. Grant closed his eyes for a moment, then he opened them and offered his arm. Ellie took it, and together they walked down the marble steps toward the council chambers. As they walked, Ellie spoke of the coming challenge. The mercenary fleet was drawing closer. She described their brutal tactics, how they had shattered worlds before. Grant felt a surge of determination. He reached out and squeezed Ellie's hand. She stopped and looked at him. We will face them, he said. We will show the galaxy what humans and your people can do when we stand together. Ellie's nodded, her voice steady. Yes, Grant, together. They resumed their walk, side by side, ready to shape their bond and their destiny in the fires to come. Eyed. He felt ready to face the stars. Grant awoke before dawn. The pale light of Ellie's world seeping through the window. He rose quietly and dressed in a simple uniform. Today marked the first full test of their joint defense plan. He could hear faint hums in the hall as Ellie's people prepared for the exercise. He took a deep breath and stepped into the corridor. Ellie's met him at the entrance. She wore a training suit that glowed with soft lines over her arms and legs. Grant noticed how calm she seemed despite the coming test. She offered him a small nod of encouragement. Grant returned the nod and followed her through the silent halls. They entered a vast chamber with curved walls and a high ceiling. The floor was marked with zones for training. Hovering drones cast steady light over the area. A group of human pilots stood at one side, nerving themselves on the other side. Psionic warriors stood in meditation, their eyes closed. Grant saw both fear and determination on the human faces. He felt a surge of pride. He knew his people carried strength. In their hearts, Elys led Grant to a console at the edge of the chamber. She tapped a panel, and a holomap rose between them. It showed a cluster of satellites surrounding a planet. Red icons marked the paths of the incoming mercenary ships. Blue icons marked human fighters. Green icons marked psionic shields. Grant listened as Elys explained. The simulation. First, your fighters will engage the blockade, she said. Then my warriors will raise shields to protect key points. Finally, a joint squadron will strike together. She pointed to a thin corridor on the map. This is where we link our forces. If we fail there, the blockade will hold. Grant studied the map. He remembered Earth's tactics for breaking sieges, but they never faced psionic blocks before. He asked, how do we know when to fire? How do we link our minds across ships? Elys touched his arm gently. We will connect through the bond engine, she said. Each ship's psionic node will link to a human pilot's neural pad. When you feel my pulse in your mind, that means the shield is ready. Grant nodded. He felt a small thrill at the thought he would literally feel her mind guiding him. The training began. Grant and Elys stepped into a small pod with 2 seats and neural connectors. The doors closed with a soft hiss. Grant felt cool air as he settled in. He placed the pad on his temple and closed his eyes. Elys did the same. A gentle warmth spread through Grant's skull. He heard Elys's voice in his mind, calm and reassuring. Ready? She asked. Grant nodded silently. Then the pod rumbled and slid into the chamber's center. The world shifted into holosimulation. Grant saw a vast fleet of dark ships moving toward a planet. He felt Elys's pulse as the first shield came online. Grant opened his eyes and took the controls. His human squadron appeared at the edge of the blockade. His squadron moved as one, weaving through enemy fire. Grant guided them with steady commands each time Elys's pulse flared. He knew the psionic shield was holding. He felt her confidence strengthening him. He pressed forward and targeted a series of weapons turrets. The sabots exploded in showers of light. Behind him, his pilots cheered in his mind. Next, the mercenary fleet shifted. They formed a tighter ring. Grant saw red icons flash as enemy reinforcements arrived. He felt a moment of doubt. What if their plan failed? But then he felt Elys's pulse, soft and sure. Grant raised his hand, and his fighters changed formation at his thought. They slipped through a gap in the blockade. Grant steered toward the heart of the ring. At the same time, Elys's warriors raised their shields above the planet's capital. A wave of green energy rippled through the sky. Grant watched as the shields deflected beams that would have burned cities. He realized how powerful her people's gift could be. He felt gratitude and respect. Grant's squadron reached the key corridor. Elys's pulse grew stronger. Grant placed his squad close to the shield's edge. He saw the red ring soften. With one final push, Grant guided his fighters through. They struck the last turret and shattered it. The blockade collapsed. Holodrones recorded the moment in slow motion. Grant felt Elys's pride flood his mind. The pod stopped moving. Grant and Elys opened their eyes. They removed the pads and looked at each other. Elys's violet eyes glowed with joy. Grant felt his own heart soar. Behind them, human pilots and psionic warriors gathered at the pod's exit. Applauding, Elys stepped forward and took Grant's hand. She led him to a raised platform. A gentle voice announced, Envoy Grant and Ambassador Elys have completed the simulation with perfect synergy. They have proven that human courage and psionic power can unify. The crowd cheered. Grant raised Elys's hand above his head. People shouted their names. He felt a warmth that went beyond victory. He felt trust, respect, and a growing bond. He understood that this test changed everything. Humans and her people had found a way to stand as one. Later, Grant and Ellis walked through the empty chamber. Footsteps echoed on the smooth floor. Grant knelt beside a pool of water at the room's edge. He picked up a single silver leaf from its surface. Ellis joined him and traced a finger along the pool's rim. "We did it," Grant said softly. Ellis nodded. She pressed the leaf into Grant's hand. He felt it pulse once more. "This leaf will remind us of today," she said. Grant closed his fingers around it. He stood and held Ellis's arm. They walked toward a tall window that looked out at the dawn sky. Light broke over the horizon. Grant and Ellis watched together in silence, ready for the challenges that lay ahead. Grant and Ellis emerged from the training chamber into a bright corridor. The exercise had proven their bond, but the real test lay ahead. Ellis led Grant to a council meeting room where human and alien leaders awaited their report. Grant straightened his uniform and followed her inside. The room was long and narrow, with a polished floor that reflected the soft lights above. At one end sat the Galactic Council elders, their faces serious. At the other end stood human representatives, watching anxiously. Grant and Ellis took seats at a central table. Grant felt the weight of countless eyes on him. He cleared his throat. "Honored counselors," he began, "our joint simulation was a success. We proved that human pilots and psionic shields can work in perfect harmony." He glanced at Ellis. She nodded gently, and Grant felt courage flow through him. He described each phase of the simulation, from the pilot's daring flight to the shield warrior's steady defense. As he spoke, he saw curiosity bloom among the counselors. When Grant finished, Ellis stood. In her clear voice, she added, "Our people share values of honor and cooperation. Together, we can protect any world." She paused, her violet eyes meeting each counselor's gaze. Grant watched the elders exchange silent looks. He sensed that the tide was turning in his favor. Then a stern voice spoke from the elder's seat. "Envoy Grant," the speaker said, "we value your success, but simulations differ from real battles. The mercenary fleet may adapt." Grant felt tension rise. He had expected praise, not doubt. Ellis reached across the table and touched his hand. Her calm presence steadied his nerves. Grant nodded. "Counselor," he answered, "we understand the risks. That is why we propose a joint task force. Human ships will form the front line, guided by psionic scouts. Our forces will share real-time data and adapt together. We have prepared plans for communication links and backup protocols." He tapped the table. "We will work side by side, not from separate commands." Another elder leaned forward. "Your plan is ambitious. Can you supply enough resources?" Grant glanced at Ellis. She rose and spoke with gentle confidence. "Our world can contribute energy crystals for your ships. These crystals enhance psionic nodes, making the shield stronger." Ellis unrolled a small pouch and poured a handful of pale stones onto the table. They glowed faintly. Grant felt pride at her gesture. A human representative added, "Earth can provide engineers and pilots. We will share our maintenance docks and repair ships." Grant continued, "And we will host joint drills on remote stations to refine our tactics." He allowed himself a small smile. He and Ellis had built this plan together, and now they presented it as a united front. The council fell silent. Grant squeezed Ellis's hand under the table. He felt her warmth and confidence. Several moments passed before the eldest counselor spoke again. "Envoy Grant and Ambassador Ellis," she said, "your efforts show promise. We approve the formation of a joint task force. You have our support." Grant felt relief flood him. Ellis smiled brightly, and she leaned in to kiss his cheek. Grant felt a glow in his heart. After the meeting, Grant and Ellis walked through a marble courtyard that overlooked distant mountains. The air was cool and scented with alien blossoms. Grant held the pouch of energy crystals in his hand. Ellis watched him with a gentle smile. "You did well," she said softly. "You spoke with courage." Grant looked at her and felt admiration deepen. He remembered their first meeting, her bold greeting, and how far they had come. Now they stood on the edge of war. He knew the real battle would test their bond. They paused by a reflecting pool. Two silver leaves floated on the water's surface, tokens from Ellie's garden. Grant knelt and picked one up. He held it against the crystal in his pouch. "This leaf helped me trust you," he said. "These crystals will help our forces. Trust each other." Ellie's touched his shoulder. "Our bond is more than symbols," she replied. "Our people will see that. They will unite because we did." Grant nodded. They dropped the leaf back into the pool and watched it drift. Later in the evening, Grant joined Ellie's in her private quarters. Soft lights bathed the room in gentle hues. Ellie's offered him a simple meal of fruit and grain, a traditional meal. On her world, Grant tasted the sweet fruits and found comfort in the shared meal. He realized that even in war, simple moments could bring peace. After supper, Ellie showed Grant a room filled with holos of her ancestors. Their faces were proud and thoughtful. She placed her hand on one holo, showing the warrior who had defended her homeland long ago. Grant listened as she spoke of her people's history, of wars fought, of losses mourned, of hope preserved. Grant felt honored to learn her story. As they spoke, a subtle emotion grew between them. Grant's respect for Ellie's deepened into something more. He spoke softly about Earth's history, how humans learn unity through trials. Ellie's listened, her violet eyes reflecting candlelight. When Grant finished, Ellie's reached out and brushed his hair back from his forehead. "We are more alike than we know," she said. "Both our peoples found strength in unity." Grant bowed his head slightly. He wanted to say how she claimed his heart, but words felt heavy. Instead, he placed his hand gently over hers. They sat in silence, sharing warmth without words. Future battles loomed, but in that moment, they found peace together. Grant knew that no matter what came, he and Ellie's would face it side by side, mouth, heart, and soul united against any storm. Grant woke to the distant roar of engines and the steady pulse of warning lights through the thin glass of the command tower. He saw the mercenary fleet in orbit. Dark hulls moved like marauders against the pale sky of Ellie's world. He rose quickly and joined Ellie's at the control console. She stood calm, her violet eyes steady. Grant felt the same determination he had felt in every test, only now the stakes were real. A soft chime announced the start of the engagement. Grant tapped his comm link. "All human pilots, form Delta Squadron. Hold formation until shields are up." He heard static as pilots confirmed. On the holomap, green arcs flickered into view around key cities. Ellie's warriors had activated their psionic shields. Grant felt her pulse of confidence in his mind. He smiled and nodded. "Good." He said softly, "Let them come." Delta Squadron moved from the carrier's hangar bays and sliced through space toward the mercenary line. Bright beams lit the void as enemy ships fired warning shots. Grant guided his pilots past the first wave, their ships gliding in precise arcs. He felt Ellie's pulse again, stronger this time, as shields rippled overhead. Human pilots dodged fire and answered with bursts of ion cannons. Small explosions bloomed against the enemy hulls. Below them, the world held its breath. Distant cities watched through orbital monitors. If Delta Squadron failed, the shields might not hold. Grant tightened his grip on the control stick. "Focus fire on their command ship," he ordered. "We need to break their formation." Holo target markers glowed red on the largest mercenary vessel. Grant guided his squadron into a tight wedge pattern. The pilots responded, their trust in his voice unwavering. Suddenly, a larger wave of ships emerged behind Delta Squadron mercenary reinforcements. Grant saw the red flare of warning. He had only seconds to act. Then he felt Ellie's pulse surge. Urgent and bright. "Now," she sent in his mind. Grant nodded and flicked a switch. His fighters kited toward the gap between the reinforcements and the shields. They fired in unison, cutting a path toward the command ship. Beams lanced through the void and struck home. The mercenary flagship shuddered. At the same moment, Ellie's warriors focused their psionic energy on the fleet's forward shields. Brilliant waves of green force rolled outward, deflecting incoming fire away from human ships. Grant saw several pilot communications praising the shield's strength. He felt pride and relief together. They were turning the tide. Then came the crisis. The mercenary command vessel unleashed a hidden weapon, a swarm of small attack drones that darted between shields and human fighters. Holo signals showed red dots flitting like angry insects. Delta Squadron pilots cried out as ships shuddered under the swarm's assault. Grant saw one drone strike a wing, and a human ship spiraled away in flames. His heart pounded. He realized they might lose momentum. He closed his eyes and reached out to Ellie's with his mind. "We need more shield power," he thought. Ellie's answered. Instantly, her pulse steady, she drew on deeper reserves. The green arcs thickened and stretched to cover a wider area. Grant felt the rush of her strength and passed it to his pilots. The drone struck the shield and exploded in glowing flashes, neutralized. Grant gave a single command, break formation and flank behind the drones. His squadron adjusted. Slipping through a narrow corridor, they struck the exposed side of the mercenary command vessel. Explosions blossomed across its hull. The ship lurched, its firepower faltered. Grant knew this was their moment. He pushed Delta Squadron forward in lockstep. They focused beams on the ship's core reactor. The enemy flagship groaned and split in two under the sustained assault. In the control tower, Grant and Ellie's watched the holomap transform. Red icons faded, replaced by blue and green. The mercenary fleet began to retreat. Grant exhaled and dropped back into his seat. Ellie's placed her hand on his shoulder. He looked at her and saw the pride in her eyes. He mirrored her smile with his own. "We did it," he said softly. Ellie's nodded and leaned in. She kissed him lightly on the lips. He closed his eyes and felt warmth spread through him. After the battle, the command tower filled with cheers. Human pilots and psionic warriors celebrated together. Grant stepped onto the observation deck. Beneath him, ships glided past the shattered remains of the mercenary fleet. Distant clouds glowed with the sunrise of a peaceful world. Grant felt the weight of what they had achieved. Elys joined him on the deck. She pressed the silver leaf in his hand, the same leaf from her garden. The wind fluttered through the thin air. "Your courage carried us through the worst," she said. Grant shook his head. "Your powers saved us," he replied. "We did it together." Ellys looked into his eyes. "This world will remember our bond," she said. Grant nodded. He thought of all the counselors who had doubted them. He thought of the soldiers who trusted his commands and the psionic warriors who guarded their world. He thought of how Ellys claimed his mouth, then his heart, then his soul. Hand in hand, they watched as the last mercenary vessel vanished into the void. Below them, cities lit their streets in celebration. Grant and Ellys stood together, their bond stronger than any shield. They had claimed victory, and in doing so, they had claimed each other. Grant and Ellys stood on the deck of the flagship as the first transport ships entered orbit. Below them, crews prepared to rebuild what the mercenaries had tried to destroy. Grant watched cargo vessels unload supplies and machinery. Earth engineers worked alongside alien builders to repair broken towers and restore power grids. He felt hope grow in his chest. This world would heal, and humans and Ellys' people would heal together. Ellys guided Grant to a viewing platform beside a tall, slender monument. The monument was made of pale stone and crystal. It stood where the battle's fiercest fight had taken place. Ellys placed her hand on the smooth surface. She closed her eyes and murmured a simple phrase in her language. Grant heard a soft hum beneath his feet. The crystal veins in the monument glowed faintly. Ellys opened her eyes and looked at Grant. "This will remind us of what we faced and what we built," she said. Grant touched the monument's crystal. He felt a pulse that echoed the battle's rhythm. He closed his eyes and remembered the heat of combat, the sharp sound of warnings, the flurry of drones, and the final explosion that broke the enemy's will. Then he saw the faces of pilots cheering, the shields glowing green, and Ellys' calm presence guiding him. He opened his eyes and nodded to Ellys. "We carry both memory and promise," he said. After the ceremony, Grant and Ellys joined a crowd in the central plaza. Humans and aliens spoke side by side. Children laughed as they chased light drones that floated like lanterns above the square. Musicians played gentle tunes on alien instruments, and human singers added simple harmonies. Grant smiled as he heard voices blend in celebration. Beside him, Ellie's lifted her voice too. Her tone clear and bright, Grant felt pride in their shared song. When the music ended, Ellie's led Grant to a quiet garden beside the plaza. Here, earth trees and alien crystal flowers grew together. Ellie's handed Grant a small sapling with pale leaves. She held his hand as he planted it in soft soil. Grant pressed the earth around its roots. Ellie's added water with a small crystal vial. They stepped back to watch. The sapling glowed faintly and leaned toward Grant's voice. Grant whispered words of care. Ellie's watched him and smiled. That night, Grant and Ellie's walked through the city under twin moons. Pale light washed streets and towers in soft silver. Grant held Ellie's hand as they walked. They passed markets where humans sold familiar fruit and aliens offered glowing gems. Grant bought a small patch of earth seeds. Ellie's bought a crystal lantern. They traded gifts and laughed at each other's choices. Grant realized how natural it felt to share simple moments with her in Ellie's quarters. They placed the seeds and the lantern on a small table. Ellie's lit the lantern, and its soft glow filled the room. Grant opened the seed pouch and lifted a single seed between his fingers. Earth told me we should grow new life here, he said. Ellie's nodded. Together, she said. Grant placed the seed in a clay pot filled with alien soil. He tapped it gently. Ellie's hummed a gentle tune, and Grant felt calm settle over him. Later, Grant knelt before Ellie's and held her hands in both of his. Her violet eyes shone in the lantern light. Grant felt his heart beat strong. He spoke softly. Ellie's, you claim my mouth, my heart, and my soul. I pledge to stand by you, to protect your world and ours. Ellie's eyes filled with warmth. She reached up and kissed his forehead. And I pledge the same. Grant, she said. They embraced under the lantern's glow, bound by promise and shared purpose. The night held their vow as stars turned above, marking a future they would shape together. In the weeks that followed their vows, Grant and Ellie's traveled together across the restored world. They visited frontier towns still rebuilding from the mercenary assault. Grant watched as humans and aliens worked side by side, clearing rubble, fixing broken windows, and planting new gardens. Ellie stood among them, sharing her people's healing gifts. Wherever she passed, wounded hands found comfort, and tired faces brightened. Grant felt proud to walk beside her, knowing their bond had sparked this unity. One morning, they arrived at a mountain valley where refugees had gathered. Families lived in makeshift shelters of fabric and metal. Children ran barefoot through dusty paths. Grant knelt to greet a small group of alien children, offering them water from a human canteen. Ellie's opened a satchel and gave each child a glowing seed from an energy crystal plant. The children's eyes widened as they held the seeds. Grant showed them how to plant the seeds in tiny pots. Ellie's whispered words of growth, and the seeds pulsed with light. Grant saw hope in the children's faces, and he knew their work mattered. After the valley, they returned to the city for a council session to formalize the new alliance's charter. Grant and Ellie stood before a wide assembly. Counselors from many worlds gathered in a grand hall. Grant spoke of the lessons learned, that courage alone was not enough without trust, and power without compassion could destroy. He described how Ellie's people had shielded human pilots, and how humans had rescued psionic warriors in danger. Ellie's added that their worlds were strongest when they protected each other. The assembly voted, and the charter passed unanimously. That night, the city held a festival in the central plaza, streets filled with lanterns and music. Humans and aliens danced together in colorful robes and simple tunics. Grant and Ellie's moved through the crowd, smiling and greeting friends. Ellie's introduced Grant to her family's elders. They offered him a garland of crystal blossoms. Grant accepted with gratitude and placed it around Ellie's neck. She laughed softly and returned the gesture with a human flower crown for Grant. The music swelled, and people cheered as the festival continued. Grant and Ellie slipped away to a quiet balcony overlooking the plaza. Below, dancers spun in circles of light. Grant put his arm around Ellie's shoulders. She leaned into him. He looked at the stars above and thought of Earth's sky, flickering with familiar constellations. He said, I once dreamed of standing here, but I never imagined it would be with you. Ellie smiled and kissed his cheek. And I never dreamed I would trust a human so fully, she replied. They watched the lanterns drift upward like glowing seeds, carrying wishes into the night. In the coming days, Grant received a message from Earth's leaders. They invited him to return home as a decorated hero and ambassador for the new alliance. He felt torn. He loved his planet and wanted to share what he had learned. Yet he knew his place was here, beside Ellie's. He discussed it with her under the silver moonlight. Ellie's held his hands and said, Your home will always welcome you, and mine will too. But our future lies where we stand together. Grant nodded. Feeling clarity settle in his heart. Instead of returning immediately, Grant proposed a joint mission to travel to a distant system threatened by piracy and show the strength of their bond. He outlined a plan to dispatch a small fleet of human and psionic ships to protect trade routes and help local worlds rebuild. Ellie's agreed, and the council approved. Grant and Ellie's watched the assembled crews prepare in the hangars. Pilots checked engines, psionic warriors tuned their nodes, and engineers loaded supplies. Grant walked the decks, offering words of encouragement. Ellie's moved among the warriors, filled with quiet support. On the day of departure, a crowd gathered on the launch pad. Grant and Ellie stood at the forefront. Flanked by allies from both worlds, Grant raised his hand in a farewell gesture. Ellie's touched his arm. Their eyes met. In that moment, no words were needed. They had claimed mouth, heart, and soul, and now they claimed a shared destiny across the stars. Grant felt a rush of emotion, hope, resolve, and deep love. As the fleet's engines roared to life. Grant and Ellie's boarded the lead ship together. The hatch closed behind them, and the stars filled the viewport. Grant reached for Ellie's hand. She squeezed his fingers. The ship shuddered and lifted from the pad. Through the window, the world they had saved shrank into distance. Grant whispered, Together. Ellie smiled, her violet eyes bright. Always together, she answered. And so they set course for the unknown. Two souls bound by courage and compassion. Their story would inspire worlds, proving that when humans and aliens choose unity over fear, they can light even the darkest reaches of space in the silent vastness. Grant and Ellie's faced the stars as one mouth, heart, and soul, entwined in a promise that would echo across galaxies.